You ever wake up one morning and find out your whole life's been put up for ransom by some smug HOA president who thinks your boat surviving a storm is basically a crime? Yeah, that happened to me. And let me tell you, it ain't the kind of story that ends with a simple apology and a fruit basket. The day Annette Whitman, president of our HOA, came strutting down the dock with her heels clicking like a metronome of doom, I knew something ugly was coming. What I didn't know, just how deep her little empire of lies went, or how much she'd regret picking a fight with a man who had nothing left to lose but his wife's last gift. See, this wasn't just any yacht we're talking about. The Hopeful was a 42-foot piece of my soul, the last thing my late wife, Carla, ever gave me before she passed. That boat's more memory than fiberglass at this point, and I'd spent months pouring sweat and grief into fixing her up, making sure she could weather any storm, literal or otherwise. And boy, did we get one. That night the wind started whispering the kind of coastal lullaby that tells you better check your lines twice, then pray for a third. By midnight it was howling. Rain smacked the window so hard it sounded like a handful of gravel thrown by a bitter god. My wife, my second Carla, bless her, was sleeping through the apocalypse like it was a lullaby. Me, I just watched the Marina lights fade behind curtains of rain, thinking of the Hopeful tied up out there in the mess. When the world finally quieted down, I stepped outside with a mug of coffee. My heart caught somewhere between hope and heartbreak. The docks looked like God had picked them up, shaken them for loose change, and dropped them back down again. Splintered wood everywhere. A few boats sunk right to the bottom, their masts poking up like accusations. But my Hopeful, she was there, barely a scratch, rocking easy in the sun. Miracle, right? That's what I thought for about 60 seconds. Then Annette appeared, hair shellacked, clipboard clutched to her chest, face pinched, like she'd smelled something foul. Didn't even offer to help anyone, just made a beeline for me, her heels stabbing the boards. "Looks like you made out all right," she purred, fake concern dripping off every syllable. "She's a good boat," I said, trying not to rise to her bait. But she was already winding up for the pitch, given the extensive community damage, and let's call it disproportionate survival of certain assets, we've had to invoke bylaw 7 section 4. You ever have one of those moments where someone says something so dumb you almost laugh in their face? That was mine. There was no section 4. But she kept going, telling me my boat surviving had created a liability imbalance and that my portion of restoration costs came to $5 million. $5 million. I said, "Ann, you're joking, right? I pay my insurance, my Marina fees. That's what they're for." But she just got frostier. Told me my special modifications meant I'd selfishly protected my asset at the expense of the community and that the fee was non-negotiable. It wasn't about the money. It was about her twisting everything I'd done to keep Carla's memory afloat into some act of greed. I told her this boat isn't a toy. It's all I have left of my wife. She just looked at me with that dead-eyed stare and said, "Your personal feelings don't exempt you from your obligations." That's when I knew this wasn't a misunderstanding, it was a shakedown. I told her I'm not paying a dime. That's not a fee, it's extortion. She slapped a neon orange notice on the board for everyone to see $5 million due from Jack Reynolds' Slip B12. From there, things went downhill faster than a greased anchor. My neighbor's folks I'd fixed engines for shared beers with started looking at me like I was public enemy number one. Whispered behind my back. Wouldn't meet my eye at the Marina store. It was like I'd suddenly sprouted horns. My wife Carla, usually unshakable, started to worry. Linda Perkins, Annette's shadow, the HOA secretary, told her they'd put a lien on our house. Carla wanted to talk to a lawyer, maybe pay something just to make it go away. I knew that was Annette's game bully people until they give up out of fear. But I couldn't let that stain Carla's memory. So I did what any stubborn engineer would do. I buried myself in paperwork. 3 days of living on coffee and pure rage, wading through the HOA's bylaws, covenants, amendments to amendments. Finally, I found what I needed. Annette had made up Section 4 out of thin air, but there was a loophole, one that let the president levy emergency assessments without a vote for structural preservation. She'd set the perfect trap, but it only worked if nobody questioned the paper trail. Old Mike the dockmaster gave me the nudge I needed, told me the real power in the marina wasn't the HOA, it was some old development company, Marina Services Corporation, that still technically owned all the docks and common areas. Most folks forgot about it. But my house, turns out, sat on one of the original parcels tied to a majority share in that sleeping giant corporation. In plain English, I owned the land the HOA was bossing people around on, and nobody realized it. Anne, meanwhile, sent her goon Frank Ellis to slap me with emergency safety inspections and ban me from my own dock. That was the last straw. I drove 2 hours to the county records office, dug through stacks of faded deeds and charters, and found the smoking gun. Not only did the HOA not own the marina, they were legally tenant subordinate to Marina Services Corporation. And as the majority shareholder that made me, well, the landlord, I didn't show my hand right away. Instead, I gathered a handful of allies, Dave from the ship store, Sarah the sailmaker, a few folks Anne had pushed around for years. Quietly, we prepped for D-Day. Meanwhile, Anne ramped up her campaign painting me as some would-be corporate raider out to seize everyone's homes. The community froze me out. My own marriage was starting to crack under the pressure, and one night Carla left for her sister's place just to breathe. I nearly lost her for good. When Anne finally got a judge to bar me from Pier B slapping a court order on top of the HOA tape, I was at rock bottom. But standing there in the dark, looking at the hopeful's name painted in gold, I remembered what Carla always said: you weather storms, you don't run from them. So I dusted myself off, and I got ready for the main event. The night of the big HOA meeting, the place was packed. Anne, Linda, Frank, all front and center, ready to make my public execution official. When the motion came up to vote on my fine and the lien, I walked up front, briefcase in hand. Told them it wasn't an HOA matter, it was a landlord-tenant issue. Laid out the original deed, the corporate charter, my own mortgage paperwork showing my majority share. Told them as of right now, the HOA's lease on all facilities was under review and all their fees and fines were null and void. You could have heard a pin drop. Then I had Mike, who I deputized as head of operations, pull the main breaker lights flickered out, and I told everyone, "Don't worry, I own the grid." By the dim emergency light, Dave handed out flyers, all dock access under new management, HOA key cards deactivated. Anne lost it, screaming about calling the cops. But Sarah stood up and said, "He can't trespass if he owns the place, Anne, but you can." The room exploded, years of pent-up anger finally spilling out. Anne grabbed her briefcase and stormed out. Not a president, just another tenant about to get the boot. The next day, she tried her old tricks, bogus letters, threats, even tried bribing marina suppliers. But nobody was buying what she was selling. We caught her on camera one foggy night, trying to sabotage the fuel pumps, and when the sheriff slapped cuffs on her, her reign ended not with a bang, but a pathetic whimper. We didn't dissolve the HOA, you usually can't. But we voted the whole board out, elected Sarah as the new president, rewrote the charter so the HOA's just about paint colors and flower beds, not people's homes or livelihoods. All bogus fines were canceled, any paid ones refunded. The $5 million gone. Just a memory, like Anne's power. When Carla finally came home, she wrapped her arms around me and said she was proud. We stood there in the driveway, apple pie on the porch, neighbors stopping by to say sorry, to offer a hand. We'd all been bullied, but now for the first time, the marina actually felt like a community. I set up the Hemlock Marina Community Fund. Every dollar, every expense posted online. Every voice heard, every neighbor, a real neighbor, not a target. Tonight I'm sitting on the deck of the hopeful iced tea in hand, Carla beside me, the docks glowing soft in the dusk. Anne's facing charges, her story's over. Ours just beginning. And I know winning isn't a state, it's a choice you make every day to stand up, to rebuild, to protect what matters. So here's my question for you, sitting wherever you are. What would you have done If your entire life was put up for ransom by someone who mistook power for justice? Do you let the bully win, or do you stand your ground even if it costs you everything? Drop your thoughts below. Tell me your own stories, your HOA nightmares, your victories, because the only way communities stay free is if we fight for each other. Storm after storm, one honest neighbor at a time.